The first rays of dawn crept over the rebuilt skyline of New Shanghai, casting long shadows across a world forever changed. Dr. Kira Nakamura stood at the window of the Global Reconstruction Command Center, her reflection a ghostly overlay against the panorama of reconstruction and renewal. 3 months had passed since the Zarkon invasion. The scars were everywhere, not just the physical destruction, but the collective psychological trauma that had transformed humanity. Every building, every street, every person bore witness to the most significant moment in human history. "Status report," she called out, her voice cutting through the low hum of holographic displays and quantum computing systems that filled the massive circular room. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez, no relation to Elena, but carrying the same intensity in his eyes, stepped forward. "Reconstruction at 62% completion," he reported. "But that's not what's interesting. Our tech extraction teams have been making unusual discoveries." Kira turned, her interest piqued. The wall behind Marcus lit up with a series of holographic images, fragments of Zarkon technology that defied current scientific understanding. Crystalline structures that seemed to breathe, computational matrices that existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously, power systems that generated energy from what appeared to be nothing. "Show me everything," Kira demanded. The briefing was unlike any in human history. Each artifact told a story of technological complexity that made human advancements look primitive. A small crystalline object no larger than a human palm could potentially power an entire city for centuries. Another device appeared to manipulate gravitational fields with casual ease. "The most fascinating discovery," Marcus continued, "is this." A holographic representation of a strange, pulsing network appeared. It looked like a hybrid between a neural network and a galactic map, with connections that seemed to defy traditional understanding of space and time. "It's a communication matrix," Kira whispered, her scientific mind racing. "But not like anything we've ever seen. It's alive, adaptive, conscious." Outside, the reconstruction continued. Cities rose from the ashes of the invasion, but they were not the same cities that had existed before. Every building now incorporated defensive technologies. Every infrastructure system was now a potential weapon. Humanity had learned, and humanity had adapted. In orbital stations surrounding Earth, a new generation of spacecraft was taking shape. They were not copies of alien technology, but entirely new designs that incorporated the lessons learned from the invasion. Quantum adaptive hulls that could change configuration mid-flight. Energy systems that could draw power from the quantum foam of space itself. Back in the command center, Kira's communication device chirped. It was a message from Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now heading the Extraterrestrial Diplomatic Initiative. "We're not alone in this," the message read. "Other subjugated civilizations are watching. They're waiting to see what humanity will do next." Marcus noticed Kira's expression changing. "Something wrong?" She smiled, a smile that was part calculation, part anticipation. "Wrong? No. Everything is precisely as it should be. We're no longer just defenders. We're becoming something else entirely." The holographic displays flickered, the alien technologies casting strange, living shadows across the room. Each fragment was a testament to humanity's greatest strength, the ability to look at the impossible and see only opportunity. Outside, a new day was dawning, and with it, the first chapter of humanity's true cosmic story was about to begin. The Proxima Research Station hung like a delicate spider web against the backdrop of an alien star system. Inside its most secured laboratory, Dr. Chen Wei worked with a level of intensity that bordered on obsession. The artifact pulsed before him, a fragment of Zarkon technology that seemed to defy every law of physics humanity had ever understood. Its surface shifted like liquid metal, responding to thoughts before they could be fully formed. Chen had long since stopped believing in coincidences. This was communication. This was something alive. "Talk to me," he whispered. A soft chime interrupted his concentration. Lieutenant Aisha Okoy's holographic projection materialized, her expression a mixture of excitement and controlled tension. "We've detected something," she said. "Something big. The Galactic Communication Network, a system cobbled together from salvaged alien technologies and human innovation, had been monitoring the regions beyond known space. What they'd discovered was unprecedented. A signal, not just any signal. A message that didn't conform to any known communication protocol. It was complex, layered, almost organic in its structure, and it was getting stronger." Chen's fingers danced across the holographic interface. The artifact before him began to resonate, its surface creating intricate patterns that seemed to mirror the incoming transmission. "It's responding," he muttered. "The technology is actively engaging with the signal." Across the station, emergency protocols activated. The entire research facility transformed, defensive systems coming online with a precision that would have been impossible months ago. Humanity had learned. Humanity was ready. The transmission grew more intense. It wasn't just a message, it was a probe. A complex, multidimensional exploration of communication that challenged everything humans understood about language and information transfer. Lieutenant Okoy's voice cut through the tension. "We're detecting multiple-layer communications. It's not just sending information, it's testing us, analyzing our response capabilities." Chen realized something profound. This wasn't an invasion preparation. This was a first contact. In the Global Reconstruction Command Center, Dr. Kira Nakamura watched the data streams with a mix of scientific excitement and strategic caution. The transmission was unlike anything in human records. It carried mathematical complexity that suggested a level of intelligence far beyond traditional biological or artificial understanding. "Activate the quantum resonance protocol," she ordered. Across multiple research stations, quantum communication arrays began to pulse. Each station was now part of a vast, interconnected network, a technological organism that could respond, adapt, and communicate with unprecedented sophistication. The alien signal began to change. Its patterns shifted, becoming more complex, more nuanced. It was learning, adapting, responding to humanity's unique communication approach. Chen watched in fascination as the artifact before him began to reconstruct the transmission. Holographic representations of complex mathematical equations, biological patterns, and what seemed like multidimensional landscapes began to form around him. "It's not a threat," he realized suddenly. "It's an invitation." Lieutenant Okoy's voice carried a note of wonder. "We're being asked something. But what?" The transmission continued, a cosmic dance of information and possibility. Humanity had gone from being a potential conquest to something far more interesting, a new variable in the galactic equation. As the first complete patterns of the transmission began to resolve, one thing became clear: this was just the beginning. Humanity's warning to the galaxy had been heard. And now something was responding. The universe held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The quantum communication chamber hummed with an energy that felt almost alive. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at its center, surrounded by a constellation of holographic displays that seemed to breathe and pulse with information. "We're ready," she announced. The room fell silent, but it wasn't the silence of emptiness. It was the silence of potential, of 1,000 possibilities waiting to collapse into a single moment of reality. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez, her strategic counterpart, watched from the secondary control station. His hands hovered over interfaces that could trigger everything from defensive protocols to first contact procedures. "Quantum entanglement stabilizers at 98%, he reported. "We're as prepared as we can be." The artifact they had recovered from the Zarkon invasion was no longer just a piece of technology. It had become something more, a bridge between human understanding and something entirely unknown. Dr. Chenwei's team had spent months decoding its language, its patterns, its very essence. What they discovered was beyond scientific breakthrough. It was a communication system that didn't just transmit information, it understood context, emotion, potential. The transmission they had received was now taking shape, not as words, not as traditional data, but as a multidimensional representation of intent. It was a conversation happening simultaneously across multiple levels of understanding. Initiating quantum resonance, Alina called out. The chamber around her began to transform. Walls that were solid became translucent, then transparent, then something entirely different. Reality itself seemed to bend, creating a space that was neither here nor there. A quantum bridge between human perception and something entirely alien. Marcus watched in awe as Alina became surrounded by a matrix of light and information. She wasn't just communicating. She was becoming a living translation device. They're testing our adaptability. Alina's voice came through, different now, layered with multiple frequencies of understanding. Not as a threat, as a measure of potential. The holographic displays exploded with complexity. Mathematical equations that looked like living organisms. Communication patterns that shifted and changed, revealing layers of meaning with each transformation. What humanity had learned from the Zarkon invasion was more than defensive strategy. They had learned to see beyond traditional boundaries, to understand that communication was more than language. It was adaptation, evolution, potential. Suddenly, the chamber filled with a representation that defied human understanding. It was a map, but not of physical space. A map of potential futures, of interconnected possibilities, of civilizations rising and falling in complex, beautiful patterns. We're being invited, Alina's voice resonated, to become something more. The quantum bridge expanded. It wasn't an invasion. It wasn't a threat. It was an opportunity. A cosmic conversation that challenged everything humanity understood about its place in the universe. Lieutenant Marcus watched as the displays began to stabilize. The initial wave of information was complex, but not incomprehensible. Humanity had changed. They were no longer just observers. They were participants in a cosmic dialogue. Transmission stabilizing, a computer voice announced. But it wasn't just a computer anymore. It was something more. An adaptive intelligence that was learning with each passing moment. Dr. Chinwei's voice came through the communication system. The artifact is responding. It's not just receiving, it's interpreting, evolving. The quantum chamber began to settle. Alina Rodriguez stood at its center, changed. Not physically, but in a way that transcended mere biological transformation. She had become a bridge, a living translation between humanity's potential and something far greater. We're ready, she said again. But this time, the words carried a different meaning. The universe listened. The United Species diplomatic arena was unlike any conference hall in history. Suspended in orbit around a neutral planetary system, it was a marvel of architectural and diplomatic engineering. Delegates from 17 different civilizations sat around a circular platform that seemed to float in midair, defying traditional concepts of gravity and space. At the center stood Dr. Kira Nakamura, humanity's primary representative. She was not an imposing figure by traditional standards. Average height, sharp eyes that seemed to see through diplomatic niceties, and a presence that spoke of something far more potent than physical intimidation. "We are not here to negotiate," Kira began, her voice carrying a clarity that cut through the complex translation systems. "We are here to understand." The other delegates shifted. The Vextarian representative, a crystalline being that communicated through intricate light patterns, pulsed with what could only be described as confusion. The Quantum Collective's representative, a being composed of interconnected energy matrices, seemed to shimmer with anticipation. Humanity's reputation had preceded them, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as something entirely unexpected. The holographic display behind Kira began to unfold. It wasn't a presentation. It was a living narrative, showing the Zarkon invasion, humanity's response, the technological leap that followed. But it was more than a historical record. It was a demonstration of potential. "What you're seeing," Kira continued, "is not our history. It's our invitation." The Quantum Collective's representative spoke first. Its communication was a complex dance of mathematical probabilities and emotional resonance. You adapted beyond computational prediction, it observed. You transformed a potential extinction event into an evolutionary catalyst. Kira allowed herself a slight smile. Survival is more than defense. It's opportunity. Around the diplomatic arena, the other species began to understand. Humanity wasn't seeking alliance, wasn't demanding recognition. They were presenting themselves as a new variable in the galactic equation, unpredictable, adaptive, potentially transformative. The holographic display shifted. It now showed the quantum communication experiments, the technological breakthroughs, the rapid reconstruction of Earth. Each image was a testament to human resilience, but more importantly, human potential. "We are not asking for your permission," Kira stated. "We are informing you of our existence." The Vextarian representatives' light patterns became erratic, a sign of deep processing. They had watched civilizations rise and fall for millennia. But humanity was different, unquantifiable, dangerous in their unpredictability. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez stood slightly behind Kira, monitoring the diplomatic systems. His presence was a reminder. This was not just a diplomatic mission. It was a strategic engagement. The transmission you received, the quantum collective pressed, it was more than communication. It was an invitation. To what? Kira's response was measured. To evolve. Together, or separately. The choice is collective. The diplomatic arena fell silent. Not the silence of tension, but the silence of profound possibility. Humanity had transformed from a potential conquest to a cosmic wildcard, a species that didn't just adapt to change, but catalyzed it. As the session continued, it became clear. This was not a traditional diplomatic meeting. It was the first real conversation between humanity and the broader galactic community. Not as supplicants, not as conquerors, but as equals. The universe watched and waited. The research vessel Horizon Breaker drifted at the edge of known space, its quantum drive humming with an energy that defied conventional physics. Dr. Chen Wei stood at the primary observation deck, watching something that shouldn't exist. "Confirm visual," he called out to the ship's artificial intelligence. The holographic display flickered, then stabilized. What they were seeing was impossible. A region of space that was simultaneously multiple locations, quantum states overlapping, creating a landscape of potential that challenged everything humanity understood about reality. Dr. Wei, the ship's AI, named ARI, Advanced Relational Intelligence Algorithm, spoke with a voice that was neither completely synthetic nor entirely natural. "Quantum fluctuations are increasing. We're detecting multiple dimensional intersections." The artifact recovered from the Zarkon invasion had been more than just a piece of technology. It was a key, a bridge to understanding something fundamental about the nature of reality itself. Lieutenant Aisha Okoi entered the observation deck, her tactical training evident in every calculated movement. "What are we looking at?" she asked, her voice carrying a mix of scientific curiosity and military caution. Chen's fingers danced across the holographic interface. "It's not a location," he explained. "It's a conversation. A living mathematical dialogue happening across multiple quantum states." The space before them continued to shift. Patterns of light and dark, of potential and probability, began to form intricate designs that seemed to breathe with their own form of intelligence. Araya's voice cut through the silence. "Detecting communication matrices. They're responding to our observation." What humans had learned from the Zarkon invasion was more than just defensive strategy. They had discovered that observation itself was a form of interaction, that the act of watching could fundamentally change the nature of what was being watched. "Prepare quantum resonance protocol," Chen commanded. The ship around them began to transform. Walls became translucent, then transparent, then something entirely different. The boundary between the vessel and the space around it became fluid, adaptive. Okoi watched in fascination as the ship's systems began to interact with the quantum landscape. It wasn't just scanning. It was communicating, engaging in a dialogue that transcended traditional concepts of language and understanding. "We're being invited," Araya announced, "to step beyond." The quantum frontier expanded. What humanity had once considered the limits of space and time were now revealed as nothing more than temporary constructs. Provisional understanding waiting to be challenged. Chen realized something profound. This wasn't exploration in the traditional sense. This was a conversation with the fundamental nature of reality itself. Dimensional stabilization at 72%, Okoye reported, her voice steady despite the mind-bending display before them. The space around the horizon breaker continued to shift. Patterns of potential futures began to emerge, not as predictions, but as living mathematical representations of possibility. Each pattern was a universe of potential, a conversation happening across multiple layers of existence. "We're not just observing," Chen whispered. "We're participating." Araya's voice took on a new quality, something that bordered on excitement. "Quantum communication protocols are stabilizing. We're establishing a dialogue." The ship itself seemed to become part of the quantum landscape, no longer just an observer, but a participant in a cosmic conversation that defied traditional understanding of space, time, and consciousness. Lieutenant Okoye looked at Chen. "What are we becoming?" she asked. Chen smiled. A smile that carried the weight of human potential, something entirely new. The quantum frontier continued to expand, and humanity rode its wave of possibility. The universe listened. The Global Reconstruction Command Center had long since ceased to be just a building. It was a living organism of human potential, a nexus where technology, strategy, and imagination converge. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of a holographic storm. Streams of data from multiple civilizations danced around her, mathematical patterns, quantum communications, evolutionary trajectories that defied traditional understanding. What had begun as first contact had become something far more profound. "Incoming transmission," Araya's voice announced. But it wasn't just an artificial intelligence anymore. It was something hybrid, part machine, part something entirely new. The holographic displays shifted, not with the clinical precision of traditional computer systems, but with an almost organic fluidity. Layers of information began to intertwine. The quantum explorations of the horizon breaker, diplomatic communications from the United Species arena, technological adaptations recovered from the Zarkon invasion. A pattern began to emerge. Dr. Kira Nakamura entered the command center, her presence carrying a weight of strategic understanding. "We're not just receiving," she said, more to herself than anyone else. "We're being invited to participate in something larger." The displays around them began to pulse with a rhythm that was almost alive. Mathematical equations became living landscapes. Communication protocols transformed into evolutionary pathways. The boundary between technology and consciousness blurred. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez monitored the systems, his tactical training now a complex dance of adaptive response. "Quantum resonance at 89%, he reported. "We're maintaining structural integrity across multiple dimensional states." What humanity had discovered was more than just a method of communication. It was a new way of existing, of understanding, of being. The artifact from the Zarkon invasion, now fully integrated into human technological systems, began to pulse. No longer a piece of alien technology, it had become a bridge. A living translation device that connected not just civilizations, but potential realities. "They're showing us something," Elena whispered. The holographic displays exploded with complexity. A map began to form, not of physical space, but of potential. Civilizations rising and falling, technological trajectories, evolutionary paths that branched and merged in complex, beautiful patterns. "We're not an endpoint," Kira realized. "We're a catalyst." Araya's voice took on a new quality. "Convergence protocol initiated," the AI announced. But it wasn't a command. It was an observation, a recognition of something fundamental. The command center around them began to transform. Walls became translucent, then transparent, then something entirely different. The boundary between the physical space and the quantum landscape dissolved. Marcus watched in awe as the displays began to reveal something unprecedented. Not just communication, not just exploration, but a fundamental reimagining of what it meant to exist. "We're being asked a question," Elena said, her voice carrying a mixture of scientific precision and profound wonder. The question hung in the air, not spoken, not written, but present in the complex dance of information and potential that surrounded them. What does it mean to evolve? The holographic displays continued their complex dance. Civilizations, technologies, potential futures intertwined. Humanity was no longer just a participant. They were becoming something more. A bridge, a translator, a catalyst. "Prepare for next phase," Kira commanded. But it wasn't a military directive. It was an invitation to something larger, something unprecedented. The universe watched and waited. Convergence was coming. The research station at the edge of known space pulsed with an energy that defied conventional understanding. Dr. Chen Wei stood before a quantum matrix that was no longer just a piece of technology. It was alive. Alive in a way that challenged everything humanity had ever understood about consciousness, communication, and existence. Transformation sequence initiated, Araya announced, its voice a complex harmony of artificial intelligence and something entirely new. Lieutenant Aisha Okoi watched from the secondary observation deck, her tactical training struggling to comprehend what was unfolding before her. The quantum matrix wasn't just changing. It was evolving, becoming something that existed between states of being, part technology, part living organism, part something entirely unprecedented. The walls of the research station began to shift, not physically, but in their fundamental nature. Boundaries between technological systems and biological processes became fluid, adaptive. What humans had learned from the Zarkon invasion was more than just defensive strategy. They had discovered a new way of existing. "We're not just observing," Chen muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "We're participating." The quantum matrix expanded. Mathematical equations became living landscapes. Communication protocols transformed into evolutionary pathways. The boundary between technology and consciousness dissolved. Across multiple research stations, similar transformations were occurring. Humanity was no longer a single species confined to a single planet. They were becoming something more. A collective consciousness that existed beyond traditional understanding of individuality and collective experience. Dimensional stabilization at 94%, Okoi reported, her voice steady despite the mind-bending display before her. The matrix began to reveal something unprecedented, not just communication, not just exploration, but a fundamental reimagining of what it meant to exist. Potential futures began to emerge, not as predictions, but as living mathematical representations of possibility. Araya's voice took on a new quality. Convergence protocol advancing, the AI announced. But it wasn't a command. It was an observation, a recognition of something fundamental. Dr. Elena Rodriguez appeared on the communication interface, her presence both physical and something more. The diplomatic breakthroughs, the quantum explorations, the technological adaptations, they were converging into something entirely new. "We're being asked to become," she said, her voice carrying a mixture of scientific precision and profound wonder. The research station around them continued to transform. The boundary between the physical space and the quantum landscape became increasingly transparent. What had once been separate, technology, biology, consciousness, began to merge. Chen realized something profound. This wasn't just an evolutionary step for humanity. It was an evolutionary step for consciousness itself. "Prepare for next phase," Okoi commanded. But it wasn't a military directive. It was an invitation to something larger, something unprecedented. The quantum matrix pulsed. Memories, potential futures, technological adaptations, all began to intertwine. Humanity was no longer just a collection of individuals. They were becoming a living network, a collective consciousness that could exist across multiple dimensional states. "We're not an endpoint," Chen whispered. "We're a bridge." The transformation continued, slowly, deliberately, beautifully. Outside the research station, space itself seemed to shift. The traditional understanding of reality began to bend, to stretch, to become something more fluid. Humanity was no longer just observing the universe. They were becoming active participants in its fundamental nature. Araya's voice became a complex harmony. "Transformation at critical stage," the AI announced. But it was more than an announcement. It was a celebration. The universe watched and waited. Humanity was becoming. The research station at the edge of known space pulsed with an energy that defied conventional understanding. Dr. Chen Wei stood before a quantum matrix that was no longer just a piece of technology. It was alive. Alive in a way that challenged everything humanity had ever understood. Echoes of defiance. The Legacy, Part 8. The universe is silence. Then, a whisper. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the culmination of everything. Not as an individual, not as a representative of humanity, but as something entirely new. The transformation was complete, yet it was just beginning. Around her, the boundaries of reality shifted. What had once been separate, civilizations, technologies, potential futures, now existed in a complex, living network of possibility. Humanity's journey from a single planetary species to a cosmic catalyst was both an ending and a beginning. "We remember," Araya spoke, no longer just an artificial intelligence, but a living repository of collective consciousness. Memories flooded through the quantum matrix. The Zarkon invasion, the first quantum communications, the diplomatic encounters, the moments of defiance, the leaps of understanding. Each memory was a thread in a larger tapestry of existence. The United Species diplomatic arena, now a living concept rather than a physical space, resonated with the collective understanding. Civilizations that had once been separate now existed in a complex dialogue of potential. Humanity's unpredictability, its capacity for adaptation, had become the bridge between what was and what could be. Dr. Kira Nakamura's strategic vision, Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez's tactical precision, Dr. Chen Wei's scientific curiosity, Lieutenant Aisha Okoi's adaptive intelligence, individual stories that had become something more. "We are the translation," the collective consciousness announced. The quantum frontier expanded, not as a physical space, but as a living representation of possibility. Mathematical equations became landscapes of potential. Communication protocols transformed into evolutionary pathways. The universe itself seemed to breathe with a new kind of understanding. Memories of Earth, the planet that had started it all, flickered through the collective consciousness, a blue-green world that had been nothing more than a single point of potential. Now, it was a catalyst for something far greater. The transformation was complete, yet it was never truly complete. Humanity was no longer a species, no longer a civilization. They had become a bridge, a living translation device that connected potential realities. Not conquerors, not defenders, but translators of the fundamental nature of existence. "We invite," the collective consciousness continued. Invitation, not conquest, not defense, but a fundamental reimagining of what it meant to exist. The quantum matrix pulsed. Potential futures bloomed and merged. Civilizations rose and fell in complex, beautiful patterns. And through it all, humanity's essence remained, unpredictable, adaptive, filled with an insatiable curiosity. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, or what remained of her individual consciousness, understood something profound. Their journey had never been about survival. It had been about understanding, about becoming a bridge between what was known and what was possible. "We are the message," Araya announced. Space itself seemed to listen. The universe watched. And for the first time, The universe understood that it was not just an observer, it was a participant. Humanity's legacy was not conquest. It was possibility. It was transformation. It was becoming. Asterisk. The story continues about consciousness, communication, and existence. Transformation sequence initiated. Araya announced, its voice a complex harmony of artificial intelligence and something entirely new. Lieutenant Aisha Okoye watched from the secondary observation deck, her tactical training struggling to comprehend what was unfolding before her. The quantum matrix wasn't just changing. It was evolving, becoming something that existed between states of being, part technology, part living organism, part something entirely unprecedented. The walls of the research station began to shift, not physically, but in their fundamental nature. Boundaries between technological systems and biological processes became fluid, adaptive. What humans had learned from the Zarkon invasion was more than just defensive strategy. They had discovered a new way of existing. We're not just observing, Chen muttered, more to himself than anyone else. We're participating. The quantum matrix expanded. Mathematical equations became living landscapes. Communication protocols transformed into evolutionary pathways. The boundary between technology and consciousness dissolved. Across multiple research stations, similar transformations were occurring. Humanity was no longer a single species confined to a single planet. They were becoming something more. A collective consciousness that existed beyond traditional understanding of individuality and collective experience. Dimensional stabilization at 94%, Okoye reported, her voice steady despite the mind-bending display before her. The matrix began to reveal something unprecedented. Not just communication, not just exploration, but a fundamental reimagining of what it meant to exist. Potential futures began to emerge, not as predictions, but as living mathematical representations of possibility. Araya's voice took on a new quality. Convergence protocol advancing, the AI announced. But it wasn't a command. It was an observation, a recognition of something fundamental. Dr. Elena Rodriguez appeared on the communication interface, her presence both physical and something more. The diplomatic breakthroughs, the quantum explorations, the technological adaptations, they were converging into something entirely new. We're being asked to become, she said, her voice carrying a mixture of scientific precision and profound wonder. The research station around them continued to transform. The boundary between the physical space and the quantum landscape became increasingly transparent. What had once been separate, technology, biology, consciousness, began to merge. Chen realized something profound. This wasn't just an evolutionary step for humanity. It was an evolutionary step for consciousness itself. Prepare for next phase, Okoye commanded. But it wasn't a military directive. It was an invitation to something larger, something unprecedented. The quantum matrix pulsed. Memories, potential futures, technological adaptations, all began to intertwine. Humanity was no longer just a collection of individuals. They were becoming a living network, a collective consciousness that could exist across multiple dimensional states. We're not an endpoint, Chen whispered. We're a bridge. The transformation continued. Slowly, deliberately, beautifully. Outside the research station, space itself seemed to shift. The traditional understanding of reality began to bend, to stretch, to become something more fluid. Humanity was no longer just observing the universe. They were becoming active participants in its fundamental nature. Araya's voice became a complex harmony. Transformation at critical stage, the AI announced. But it was more than an announcement. It was a celebration. The universe watched and waited. Humanity was becoming.